is that we have a long weekend ahead of us. Hopefully, we can just ease into that with a bit of poetry. Um, and greetings to the old, okay, not so much, people from my past, creative writing MA. I remember I wrote this Stranger, my first collection, rather chapbook. Um, but now we're on to Rumbling, and yeah, I hope you guys have a copy already. So yeah, I'm just gonna get into it. My first poem I'm reading today is called Madala. Um, Madala is based on the typical township old man, um, usually, you know, likes to drink his liquor, watch some boxing, listen to jazz music. So it was just a portrait poem of the typical township uncle, if you may. So here it is, the poem Madala. Dala Madala, whiskey breath, cheering on, watching. Blow by blow, rows of Soweto, out and blooming in six directions of boxing. Burnout, Hostus Mabuza, Don Laga, Supernova tapping shoes of Madala. Lama brown blazer, vintage Cressida, life is Goro Goro behind the steering wheel and cruising. Okay? And then the next poem, I have a little bit of a list here that I'm reading from. Excuse me. It's a poem called Ding Dong. Ding Dong is inspired by a Kwaito song by Joe Nina of the same name, and it was quite a big hit back in the day. And the poem itself is an acrostic poem, so each beginning of the poem forms a letter or a word. In this case, it's Maria Podesta, who the poem is based on, but also the song itself is based on Maria Podesta, an Argentine actress from the 50s. Okay, so this is Ding Dong. Maria, an Argentine actress from the 50s, in 94 immortalized as a refrain for infectious ngoma in the early days of a genre affectionately known as Kwaito, Podesta. On the matter of aesthetics, definition, tastemakers, and the endless body shaming, stench of flowing vitriol, social media gutter spewing the dirty water, not clear enough as a reflection of what beauty truly is. Okay? The next poem I'm going to read for you is called Mbongeni. So Mbongeni is a poem about Durban, the clashes between Indians and Black Africans that exist. There was a song in 2002 by Mbongeni Ngema called Amandia, which is Indians in Zulu. This song was actually banned from the radio stations back in 2002 for its controversial content. So I just just reimagined that for this poem. So this is the Bongani. There is heat, then there is sun mercilessly beating skin, but this does not compare to the smell of blood in the air. Oh Mbongeni, your song Amandia, reminiscent of the blood that boiled, the tension that never left, some still feel it as a high cost of living, inconvenient shops around Durban. Yeah. And so the final poem that I'm going to read for this first portion of, of Rumbling is called Cassette. Cassette has been featured on Johannesburg Review of Books, so it's a quite popular poem from the chapbook. This is Cassette. I could never bring myself to ask the artist and title of the cassette tape that my uncle was killed for. On the streets of Gomashu F, the murderer still walks. His footsteps block out our moments of silence. Okay? That's the first portion of Rumbling. The more musical portion, if you ask me, I listen to quite a lot of kwaito, jazz, hip hop music, but yeah, that's the final musical poem. And so the second portion of rambling, I thought I'd begin with a poem called Zombies. Okay, Zombies is a bit of a more political poem. Also has a few references to classical studies. So this is Zombies. Epic the suit, a la tree and the axe, the fable of a Sophica, lingua franca of the Republic, mahogany-colored hands, sacrifice of ash trees, wooden handle, discreet whispers, one of us. Of the severed wood, lingering quiet storm, under the soil beneath our feet, their moans, as triffids gradually calling outward. In the agony of the unresolved, there is a hissing, whispering, weep, scream, hysterical. Okay? So just for a brief interlude, I have a few poems that are not in rumbling that I'd like to read for you tonight. Um, hope you will indulge me. So for World Poetry Day, there was a reading of an anthology called Rest for a Wayfarer. It was an anthology in memory of a lecturer called Pius Adensami, who died in the Ethiopian Airlines crash. I think this was in 2019, early in 2019. So I made a contribution to that anthology with this poem that I'm about to read now. It's called Skapa, or the sliding door operator. So Skapa being the sliding door operator in a taxi. Okay, so this is the poem. Skapa, or the sliding door operator. The way you personify the door, Chauvi Maria Pepper, the human counter, the clanging sound, the change, the tiny silver pieces. Your palm on the door, the way you smash the door, the sound it makes, the breaks, the quantum halts from all your panel beating, industrial genre of music, the door, the dents you leave on the door. And so I ask, whose scars are these? The way you let the commuter in, might you be a projection of the cold wind drifting in from the door? Steel slides on steel, unfolding your folding chair. You are self-sacrifice for the love of the clanging sound, the change. The more things stay the same. And about those small spaces in between chairs, does it hurt when your body must fit there? As you sit, stand, sit, or does it hurt more that this is how you make your living? There are signs of strength and there are signs of weakness. Shoulder tensing, clenching, pushing full force. The sound when steel slides on steel. Facial clench, eyeballs closed, shut tight, tucked inside. Voice sinks. The whisper. My fear of death. The interior of a 22-seater quantum. Of all the places that it could end. Sliding door operator. In truth, it was I who opened your door from the outside. In that single instant, like a predator, the door swallowed me with a sound made by steel when it slides on steel, a thud when the door slams shut, the door now behind me, and with that safety grabbed from my hands and given to God. Gentle easing of the lids, the eyeballs, and when my eyes open, they find you, sliding door operator, with your cold face, your cold stare, as cold and hard as cash. The way you personify the door, opening and closing, that sound, when steel slides on steel, the door slamming shut, a sound of finality. Sliding door operator, how do you keep so cool? How do you remain unperturbed? Then it occurs to me how you would already be ready, or could it be that finally you are deaf? Okay, that was sliding door operator. And then another sort of different poem that I'm plugging. There's an anthology that's just been released by Wheelbarrow called Years of Fire and Ash. Um, I think Jonathan Ball Publishers is the publisher for that. And I contributed my poem called Crowd Gathered Celebrating for a Taste of Blood. It's a long title. I'll say it again. It's Crowd Gathered Celebrating for a Taste of Blood. Okay. It's yeah, also a bit of a political poem as well. I hope you enjoy it. So so it's violence as a pain shared between men. It has been said time and time again, to be a man, one must save face at all times. It was pain that drove defense against a loss of power. To think how clenched fist was once a symbol of power, down the road to grievous bodily harm, now a symbol of how man will hold on to the pain, never letting go. Okay. That was crowd gathered celebrating for a taste of blood. And now back to the Rumbling poems. The next poem I'm going to read from Rumbling is a poem called In Labor. Okay, let me just find my place. Uh, okay, In Labor. Arms wide set, arms wide set from brow, shield sunshine from the eyes. Hands plant the seeds. Free will by the shade. Blood waters leaves, and the blues grow. From the womb towards the light, prophetic tears down brown skin. For the soil has strangled fruit, leaving it cold and hard to swallow. Okay. That was In Labor. And according to my list, the next poem I read to you is a poem called Twin. I am a twin. I have a twin who doesn't look like me, so it makes us, I believe, maternal twins. Um, so this is a poem that I wrote for him. So yeah, this is Twin. Perhaps the difference began from the parting of lungs, crying from the depths for the first time. You left me behind in the womb, were the first to find a source of light. As the sun entered, slow, gradual, gentle, there I found you, brother, waiting for me on the other side of dawn. Okay, that was Twin. And yeah, I think that's it. How much time do we have? I think, should I read another poem? I don't know.
No rush. You can read a few still. There's lots of
Okay,
there's lots of time.
all right. Let's look for some that I read from all my list. Um, I'm gonna read No Exits because it's a quite a popular poem. Um, most people seem to like the poem. Okay, so No Exit. I'll explain a bit about the poem afterwards. No Exit. Durban transports, Pentuzuma ENF bus, and all of a sudden the singing of hymns, whipping out of Bibles, tongues beating on the holy book. The congregation got on from the bus stop, opposite Musgrave Mall, their frail legs, steep strides up steps, arms pulling their bodies up, the driver handing back tickets. They began just as he passed over Port City, the motion of circles, dabs along corners of her forehead, gentle strokes along the temples, our end foreshadowed by a handkerchief. After catching her breath, the sermon about the last days, life flame in the throat from the burn of the word, a scorching in the scraping of the lungs, hellfire and brimstone, echoes of sulfur in the smoke, like mirrors, the chorus of the elderly devoted, on the end of every word, the coming of the flood, the rest of us left to drown in holy oxygen. These are holy words. Safa sapela bazalwane, disarming, respect for the elderly. The legs made no attempt to kick out of emergency class. A collective paralysis. Blindly we followed into the final stages of our grief, and as we turned toward the window to measure how far we had come, how much more of this to take, we were only in Newlands West. It would be a whole two stops, before we even reached Kwamashi. That was no English. So yeah, as you can tell, the bus I was on got spiritually hijacked by some evangelists, and so we all had to sort of join the chorus of singing, which yeah, it was an interesting situation to be in. Um, then I'm gonna read a poem called "Slow Jam Soga Mashu," one of my favorite poems. Even the ballads of Vendos couldn't make it better. At times, I feel like life in Marshall moves so slowly, almost as if the people have become the music they listen to, blasting the sound system, even a bride, but not much washing of cars. Gambla, I know you're scared. You should ask if we're scared too. Okay. And then read another poem. This page two. Let's read a longer poem now. I'm gonna read a poem called Durban. It's the concluding poem, rather the penultimate poem from the collection or the chapter. Durban. Eyes, sight see trees, the land, same eyes deeming our beauty primitive. Hands, bricks, the layers, fields, whole fields, institutionalized. The bodies swallowed by the water, flow and its purpose. The ocean, with all the commotion, my fear is we are yet to listen to the waves, before waves relent and calmness falling over the sea. Mouth of ocean and swallowed, within dips of the belly, will we find Chief Bambata, because after him our hands, lines on our palms drawn to labor, and crashing sound of Gandhi's voice like waves over Bambata's bones. And so the story goes. And ocean, won't you tell me of bones, salt content, and the bodies that may seem familiar to you? And so the story goes. On water in all directions, the ocean and its purpose. Water diluting blood, sea salt of the ocean, bodies swallowed by the sea. And for a long time, the wait until the wave relents, and when it does, now to move as the water does, of all the bodies lost to the mouth of ocean. Some will still listen in hope. May stillness not be confused with silence. May new life form in the closure, and may the sound of still, calm, and tranquil be received with the heart warm as the ocean. Okay, that was the final poem. I think I'm all out. Are you still there?
Yes. Yeah, we're absolutely here. Read another one, please.
Okay. Um, I had assumed that this might happen, so I'm just going to experiment a bit. I have this poem that has just recently been published. I'm going to read from my computer, so you have to bear with me. This poem is called The Brother Moves On. It's another poem about my brother, and yeah, it was in the recent edition of Tint Journal. Okay, so The Brother Moves On. Do you remember when we were younger? Ukoko gathering pawpaw from my garden, sitting patiently, waiting for us to finish indulging in the fruit, knowing full well that her grandsons would only want more. With the very last one, she plunged a knife deep inside the pawpaw, cutting it in two. The way she sat close by and watched us, tasting rich textures of a tropical delicacy. And once we had our full, she imparted wisdom, are the necessity to share with one another, reminding us that when we entered this world, we entered it together as twins, Amawele, and that twins was how God had intended it to be, that you and I were born this way for a reason. Lest we forget her lesson in the garden, much later in life, I would learn that our grandmother decided on our names in much the same way. After you entered this world first, it was Ukoko who decided that my name would be on the end of yours, as a reminder that even when we separate, we'll remain together always. Brother, I know how life can often feel like years of accumulating soil, burying us alive. And on that day in the garden, I felt the words of our grandmother as her bare hands in brown soil delicately placed a seed deep within us, in a place where hope can live. Her hope that someday a soaring tree with leaves protruding from tender parts of the chest, a bond as strong as the oak tree that towers over, providing shade from a hot sun. And so, brother, with this in mind, I must ask you once more, do you remember? Okay, so brother moves on. Um, yeah, I think he's still on mute. Still on mute. Okay,
Sihle, can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Is that the last one? Do you have another one you'd like to read? Or
Yeah, I can read more, but it's just I know there's a Q&A and then there's a open mic
open
afterwards.
mic?
I'm hoping we have time for all of that.
Well, that was a beautiful poem on which to end. Um, I don't know whether people have questions. I mean, I've something that I noticed was how open-ended many of the poems were. How you sort of leave us on the bus that's been hijacked um, by the by the fundamentalists, and you sort of don't pass judgment. You just leave us there. Don't know if you want to say
Mm.
something about that. Does it have that
Oh,
open-ended feel to you? Does it have that open-ended feel to you?
oh, I was a bit distracted. I think it's always good to surprise the reader. Because I think I've also surprised myself in composing the poems as well. Um, I think that element of surprise for me is what makes me enjoy to write poetry. So the fact that we might have a twist and a turn here and there for me is keep me excited,
Mm.
and I wouldn't want to be too predictable
Mm.
in what's coming next. Um, I guess it's one of those things that keep me interested as well. But in terms of the poem itself, no exits. Yeah, it's definitely made a lot of noise for me for the chapbook as well. And
Mm.
I think it's that element of surprise that you speak of um, with the fundamentalists and colliding with me, who's not so much of an extremist as the people who hijack the buzzword. And yeah, these contrasts are what really I work towards as well, making these contrasting juxtapositions,
Mm.
which really emphasize the point that I'm trying to make. Yeah.
You want to say something about the title of the chapbook again?
Oh, Ramblin'. Ramblin' is yeah, it's like a collage, if you may. The title itself is inspired by that '70s boxing match between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman.
Rumble in the Jungle.
The Rumble in the Jungle, yes. And I was also doing a lot of reading around that and the whole Pan Africanism movement. It's the color scheme as well. And yeah, it's just a collage of ideas with regards to this poetry for me and what I thought it should be going to this project. Um, yeah, the title itself is has been used before, um, but I just shortened it just to make my point. Is there anything specifically that you want to know from the title?
I just wanted to know what the source was, and anything
Yeah.
you like to say about it. But yeah, no, that helps. That's helpful.
Mhm. All
I
right.
was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions for Sihle? If you do, if you can just unmute yourself, or Nondwe, if you see questions in the chat, if you'd like to read them out. While we're waiting, would you like to, are there particular sort of influences? Are there people whose poems, whose books meant a lot to you growing up? People who inspired you?
So while I was at Rhodes, I was doing my classical studies. I did it from undergrad to postgrad level. So Euripides, Socrates, a little bit of Plato. I was reading that. Just not so much as a direct influence, but just to be a little bit more grounded. But then when it comes to the South African poets, Khululeng Umalo, and Kiropate Kgogotsile were
Mm.
big influences. And yeah, just I really read a lot of the Black consciousness poets. Um, I consider myself cut from the same cloth, but I think I'm writing more modern poetry now. I don't think it's really in that same vein, but some of the same sentiments I agree with. But of course, there needs to be a change, a more modernized version. Um, Also, the Nigerian poets right now is what I'm enjoying. Um, there's a lot of them that I'm enjoying. Um, there's a collective called the Unserious Collective, and they're really a talented bunch of poets. Um, there's a lot of them to mention, but I think as a collective as a whole, I really like what they do because yeah, they're really opening doors for African poets. Um, they are appearing on international anthologies as Nigerian poets, so I've been enjoying their work. Yeah, Dambuzo Marichere as well. A big fan of Dambuzo. Um, yeah, that radicalism for me is, I think, what we need now. Kolaka Putuma has given us that with regards to having a really bold approach to writing poetry. Um, yeah, off the top of my head, those are my influences.
Thank you.
Mm.
And then music, of course. A lot of
Yes,
musical
yes, yes.
references.
Lots and lots of music. Um, yeah, just I listen to it as I work. Sometimes just to distress. Um, yeah, I think it's good to also be a little bit more broad with our influences, inspirations.
Mm.
Uh, you might just watch a nice documentary on Netflix and have an idea come to you. So yeah.
Any other questions? You want to open up the floor a little bit?
Jacques?
Hello.
Hi, I have a question which is not really to do with the poem. I love the poem, The Brother Moves On. Sihle, is that a musical reference as well? Because there's that band.
Yes, yes, it is. It is a
Ah,
musical
okay,
reference. Uh, you
great.
understood that, caught that.
Okay,
um, so yeah, the
cool.
the brother. Sorry.
No, I know a couple of their albums.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're well versed.
music is one of my, yeah, one of the things that I'm passionate about. So I was lucky enough
Yes.
to discover them. Hmm,
They're a very good band. I like their live performances. I haven't been privileged enough to be in Johannesburg for one of their gigs.
right.
Um, yeah, they're great.
Hey, no, I haven't had that privilege either, but they've got tremendous energy and
Yeah,
yeah, very vital.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of the brother moves on, um, the next sort of body of work that I'm working on, I don't know if it's going to be a chapbook or a collection. That's one of the opening poems on that collection. But I'm moving towards writing more about family and sort of the ancestral lineage of my own family, which is the Ntulis. So the Ntuli name is going to be a big component of the next body of work, and of course, more reference to my brother, my grandmother. But yeah, it's probably a long way from being anywhere near done. But yeah, I am working on making more music references as well.
So, sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm haunted by the fact that you don't ask what cassette it was.
Oh,
That stays with me.
yeah. It's a true story actually.
I
Um,
thought so.
my 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 uncle, I think he died when I was like very young. I think I was 1 year old when he got murdered over the cassette tape, and it's a story that stayed with my family for a very long time. Uh, Probably still hurts even now.
It's a
It's a
great
great
poem.
poem. Mm. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to suggest that we have a 5-minute break and then come back for open mic. And Nondwe, if I can ask you to call out the names, please, of people who want to read. I'd really appreciate that. So please,
Hi.
thank you. Please
Yeah,
bring.
sure, Zach, but my bandwidth is really bad, so excuse
Okay,
any errors on my end.
no, that's fine. And I'm here as well. I'm here as
Okay.
well. So please bring a poem or two. We'll probably have time for a second round. See you all in 5 minutes.